All I remember is pulling Ellie through the smoke, shoving her into the cold night, and turning back for the photos on the wall. That's when the floor gave way. My name is Anna Carter, and I never thought pumpkins would be the last thing I touched on earth. But what Jesus showed me in those 9 minutes will make you look at everything you've ever thrown away differently, including yourself. Let me take you back to that October night. October 27th. The air smelled like cinnamon, wood smoke, and second chances. My daughter Ellie, 9 years old, sat at the kitchen table surrounded by orange halves and newspaper. Her little hands were buried in seeds and pulp, grinning like she'd found treasure in the mess. "Mom," she said, "why does everyone throw the guts away?" I laughed. "Because they're slimy, sweetheart." She held up a handful, glistening in the light. "But they look like stars." I still hear her say it. We were carving pumpkins for the church's fall fundraiser. A few dozen bright gourds lined the counter, each waiting to become a face. Outside, dusk settled on our quiet Midwestern street. Neighbors' porches glowed with candles. Inside, the radio played softly, crackling with a local news story. Americans will toss more than 1 billion pounds of pumpkins this weekend. I remember frowning. All that beauty, grown only to be thrown away. It sounded less like a statistic and more like a confession. I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be. When the smell of smoke reached me, I thought it was from the stove. Then Ellie screamed. The jack-o'-lanterns on the sill flickered wild, shadows leaping up the curtains. A candle had tipped. In seconds, the drapes were flame. I grabbed the fire blanket, shouted for Ellie to run. She hesitated, crying, "Mom." I pushed her toward the back door, the heat already biting. The blanket caught fire before I did. They said later the neighbors saw the roof burst into light, a halo of orange, like harvest turned to heaven. All I remember is pulling Ellie through the smoke, shoving her into the cold night, and turning back for the photos on the wall. That's when the floor gave way. The world went silent. The fire disappeared. And the light that met me wasn't orange anymore, it was gold, rising from the ashes like dawn itself. When the floor collapsed, there wasn't a fall-only release. One breath I was screaming. The next, the scream was gone, but the sound kept echoing somewhere far below. Flame should have hurt, but it didn't. It moved through me like light through glass. I floated above the smoke, watching my body lying amid broken beams and glowing embers. The house looked small from here, a dollhouse cracking open, every memory inside turning to shimmer. Firefighters burst through the front door. One dropped to his knees, shining a flashlight toward the stairs. Through the haze, I saw Ellie in a blanket outside, barefoot, shaking, her face streaked with soot and tears. She was alive. That was all I needed. The ceiling gave way again, sparks rising like fireflies. Time didn't move. It unfolded. I saw every spark linger midair, each one carrying an image. Ellie's first steps. The day we moved into this house, the pumpkin seeds still scattered on the table. Every ordinary thing I'd ever ignored was glowing with purpose. Then everything slowed until it was utterly silent. The fire froze in place, a sculpture of light suspended around me. Ash drifted like snow, gray and peaceful. The smell of smoke faded, replaced by something warm and sweet, like earth after rain. From the stillness came a whisper not through the air, but through the core of me. It was familiar yet beyond recognition, the voice I had prayed to once as a child and stopped expecting to hear back. "Anna," it said, "the harvest isn't over." The light in the room changed deep gold, alive, gentle. The burning beams softened into rays, and the walls melted into open air. I looked down one last time at what had been my life, then toward the glow opening above the smoke. It pulsed once, welcoming. I stepped forward and rose. What I saw next, I'm still trying to find words for it. The smoke folded into gold mist, and then I was standing in a field wide, endless, and drenched in late autumn light. The air smelled of earth and sugar, like harvest mixed with heaven. All around me stretched rows upon rows of pumpkins, millions of them glowing softly from within, as if the sun had taken root in every shell. I bent down and touched one. The rind was warm, alive, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Each pumpkin glowed a different hue: orange for joy, pale gold for mercy, deep amber for sorrow. Some were whole and perfect, others were split open, seeds spilling like pearls into the soil. And yet, even the broken ones shimmered. The light leaking out of their cracks looked redemptive. A breeze swept through the field, rustling dried vines that whispered like voices. I listened, and I could hear them: laughter, prayers, arguments, lullabies, 1,000 human lives humming through these gourds. Each one was a story. Each one mattered. At the edge of the horizon, something glimmered: a figure walking slowly between the rows. He wasn't in a rush. Every step he took seemed to make the air sing. As he passed, even the dimmest pumpkins brightened, their dull orange flaring to gold. I knew before he reached me who he was, because every part of creation already knew his name. "Anna," he said, his voice softer than wind through corn, "welcome to the field. I wanted to ask where I was, but," he answered before I could speak, "this is where heaven keeps what earth forgets." He motioned toward the horizon, and for a moment I saw the landfill behind my old grocery store, mountains of discarded pumpkins rotting under gray rain. Then the vision shifted back to this glowing field, radiant and alive. "Nothing I make," he said, "was ever meant to be thrown away." But what he showed me next broke every assumption I'd ever made about God's economy. He walked toward me slowly, light spilling from his footsteps like honey pooling over the soil. Everywhere he stepped, broken vines straightened, wilted leaves unfurled, and hollowed pumpkins filled again with glow. It wasn't repair, it was resurrection. His robe brushed the ground, streaked with the colors of the harvest: russet, gold, ivory, and I realized even heaven wore autumn like a crown. When he smiled, the light around us brightened until the air itself seemed to hum. "You see waste," he said, "but I see waiting. The earth knows how to redeem what people abandon. Seeds rot, and then they rise. But the human heart has forgotten this." I glanced around at the millions of pumpkins, their light pulsing softly like living candles. Each one seemed to breathe in time with his voice. "Every harvest tells the same story, Anna. Nothing in my Father's world dies without purpose. Even what burns can bloom again." He knelt beside one of the split pumpkins, its shell charred, blackened like the edges of my burned home, and placed his hand upon it. Instantly, the darkened rind turned gold again, and the seeds inside began to shimmer. Tiny green shoots broke through the soil around it. "What people call ruined," he said, "heaven calls ready." Tears filled my eyes. "All that time," I whispered, "I thought I was wasting my life, struggling, failing, trying to keep everything from falling apart." He looked up at me, and his gaze held every sunrise I'd ever missed. "Nothing offered in love is wasted. The smallest act done with care outlives every monument made for pride. Even your exhaustion fed roots you could not see." He stood, his hands still glowing faintly with the gold that had restored the gourd. "Come," he said, turning toward the horizon. "You've seen what the earth recycles. Now you will see what heaven reclaims." And then he showed me something I'll never forget. The golden field dimmed until only Jesus and I remained, standing before what looked like a curtain woven from light. When he lifted his hand, it parted and my life poured through like a river of memory. At first came the years I'd tried to forget. The day my husband left, the late night shifts at the diner, the bills stacked like accusations on the counter. I watched myself holding Ellie as a baby, crying because I didn't have enough formula money and pretending to her that we were playing peekaboo. I'd called those moments failure. Here, they glowed faintly, steady as candles. "These are your hidden offerings," he said. "What the world never celebrates is what heaven crowns." The scene changed me, throwing away spoiled groceries after double shifts, muttering that everything I touched went bad. I saw now how each act of care, even the ones ending in waste, left ripples that never stopped. The neighbor I'd fed, the waitress I'd encouraged, the prayer whispered, half believing. Every crumb had become seed. Another memory, me standing in church, hands clenched, feeling unseen among perfect families. The bitterness on my face looked darker than I remembered. Yet Jesus didn't flinch. "You called this resentment," he said, "but it was hunger for belonging, for meaning. Hunger is holy when it drives you toward me." Then I saw the small joys. Ellie laughing in grocery aisles, the stray cat we adopted, the mornings I sang off-key to stay awake. They shone brighter than any achievement. Tears blurred my vision. "All that waste," I murmured, "all that pain, why did you let me lose so much?" He answered softly, "Because loss is where love takes root. What you thought I discarded, I was planting." The curtain of memory closed, leaving the faint scent of pumpkin and smoke in the air, earthly, honest, redeemed. But he wasn't finished. What he revealed about the church, it shook me. The golden field melted into darkness, and in its place appeared a vast landscape, mountains made not of stone, but of trash. It stretched farther than sight, glowing faintly with decay. I recognized shapes among the heaps, plastic toys, broken furniture, bags of spoiled food, pumpkins collapsing under rain. A river of waste ran between the mounds, glimmering with the reflections of neon city lights. It was both beautiful and unbearable. Jesus stood beside me, his face illuminated by the dim orange glow. "This is how heaven sees what the world calls progress," he said. "Every discarded thing carries the fingerprint of its maker and the sigh of its neglect." As we walked, the piles shifted. Each object shimmered briefly and revealed a person behind it, a life thrown away, a man labeled addict, a woman shunned for her past, a teenager dismissed for doubt. Every face flickered like a dying candle. When they vanished, the smell of smoke was replaced by something bitter, regret. "They throw away people the way they throw away harvests," he said. "Perfect skin for the shelves, perfect stories for the pulpits. But I dwell among the bruised." I watched as entire churches appeared within the landfill, beautiful buildings built over buried dreams. Sermons echoed faintly, words polished yet empty. Their lights flickered, and for a moment I saw that they too were wasting something wonder. Then, through the haze, I spotted small glimmers, soup kitchens, shelters, hands passing bread, arms around outcasts. Each spark sent ripples of gold across the garbage hills until they began to tremble, breaking apart into soil. From that soil, new shoots sprouted green, tender, unashamed. "Redemption always grows from what they bury," Jesus said quietly. "Nothing stays wasted once love touches it." The landfill dissolved into mist, replaced again by the scent of pumpkins warming in sunlight. Somewhere in that warmth, I could hear the earth sigh, not in grief this time, but relief. Then he showed me what redemption actually looks like. The mist cleared, and we were standing once more in the field, only now it was alive in ways words can't hold. The air shimmered with motion. Pumpkins split open, their seeds lifting into the breeze like glowing embers carried toward the sky. Everywhere they landed, new life stirred, green shoots curling up from ash, flowers blooming out of broken shells. Even the soil seemed to sing. Jesus walked ahead of me, his steps releasing waves of color, gold, crimson, emerald, like autumn returning to every barren thing. He reached down, scooped a handful of soil, and held it out. Inside his palm, tiny roots twined together, forming a small sprout that glowed faintly. "This," he said, "is what I do with ruin. What the world discards, I use to restore. The ground beneath us rippled with light. I watched faces emerge in the glow people I'd seen in the landfill vision, once rejected, now radiant. The addict, the runaway, the single mother crying in her car. Each stood tall among the rows, hands open, shining like lanterns. From their scars grew vines heavy with fruit. They were no longer waste, they were witnesses. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed. Lord, I whispered, how can something so broken become so beautiful? He smiled, sunlight flickering in his hair. Decay isn't the end of creation. It's the doorway to resurrection. Seeds can't bloom until they break. Hearts can't heal until they yield. The wind picked up, scattering more seeds across the golden plain. Each one carried a memory, laughter, failure, prayer, all redeemed into purpose. It hit me then. Every loss I'd ever mourned was already planted in the soil of eternity. The field around us pulsed brighter, every gourd shining with quiet joy. Anna, he said, tell them this. The ground they call grave is where I grow grace. And then he gave me my assignment. The wind settled again, and the light softened until it felt like dusk, gentle, forgiving, full of promise. Jesus stood beside me, his hand resting on a vine that had grown from the ashes of a ruined pumpkin. The fruit hanging there glowed faintly, its skin marked with scars that looked almost like fingerprints. Anna, he said, you've seen what love can do with loss. Now I'm sending you back to tell them. I hesitated. Back to what's left. He nodded, smiling. To what's waiting. He gestured toward the horizon. I saw my small town again, the same grocery store that dumped pumpkins by the truckload, the same church hall that always felt too quiet after Sunday service. But this time, light was seeping through everything. The bakery, the school, the shelter on 4th Street. Each place pulsed with potential. Tell my people, he said, that stewardship isn't just about saving things, it's about seeing them. The world wastes what it stops seeing: food, time, talent, each other. The church was never meant to be a landfill of forgotten gifts, but a garden for resurrection. I felt his words root inside me, deeper than conviction, like calling, becoming breath. He took one of the glowing seeds and placed it in my palm. It burned warm but didn't hurt. This is your testimony, he whispered. Plant it where despair grows fastest. I looked down at the seed, then at the field behind us, endless light, endless harvest. I'm afraid, I admitted. He smiled wider. Good. Only the humble sow hope. The horizon brightened until it became a doorway. Wind swirled around us, carrying the scent of smoke and rain, the two things that always come before new growth. Go, Anna, he said. Tell them I collect what they discard and I'm not finished harvesting. The doorway flared, and the world of gold folded into firelight. The light folded inward, becoming smaller, warmer, like sunrise pouring back into a single heartbeat. Then came weight, smoke, gravity, sound. I coughed, a ragged gasp tearing through my chest. Voices shouted above me, sirens, radios, hurried footsteps. We've got a pulse, someone yelled. Hands pressed against my ribs, wrapping me in foil blankets. The air reeked of ash and melted plastic, but beneath it all, I smelled pumpkin sweet, faint, familiar, like grace hidden in the smoke. When I opened my eyes, the night sky was fractured by red and blue lights. Firefighters moved through what was left of the house, water still steaming on the debris. Through the haze, I saw Ellie on a stretcher, unhurt except for soot on her cheeks. Our eyes met. She smiled through tears and whispered, "Mom, you glowed." They told me later that the fire should have taken me instantly, that the structure had collapsed seconds before they reached me. One paramedic said when they found me, my body was cold, pulse gone, but something about the air felt different. He said, "We couldn't stop trying. It was like someone else was breathing for you." In the hospital, as the machines hummed around me, I noticed something strange. The IV drip beside my bed ticked in rhythm with the monitor, steady, patient, like the heartbeat I'd heard in the field. When I closed my eyes, I could still feel the seed he'd placed in my hand, not burning now, but alive, like a quiet ember under my skin. The nurses called me a miracle. The reporters called me lucky. But as I lay there with my daughter's hand in mine, I whispered the truth only heaven could have taught me. It wasn't luck that brought me back. It was unfinished harvest. It's been 6 months since the fire. The house is gone, but the land still smells like autumn when it rains. Ellie and I planted a garden there this spring. We started with pumpkins. They grew faster than they should have, thick vines curling around the fence, blossoms glowing gold even at dusk. Every time we picked one, I thought about the field I'd seen, the light inside each gourd, the voice that said nothing I make is meant to be thrown away. When people ask what happened that night, I tell them I died. Yes, but more truthfully, I was composted. Everything old in me broke down so something living could grow. I stopped chasing perfect and started rescuing what the world ignores. Now, every Saturday, Ellie and I collect discarded produce from local markets. We cook soups, roast seeds, deliver meals to the shelter. We call it the second harvest. Our motto hangs on a cardboard sign in the church kitchen. God doesn't do waste, He does work. At first, the congregation thought it was just charity, but I've watched hardened men soften while chopping bruised vegetables. I've seen laughter rise where pity used to live. The work has turned into worship. Sometimes, when I speak to other churches, I tell them this: revival won't come through new programs or louder sermons. It'll come when we start treating people the way God treats leftovers, not as trash, but as tomorrow's soil. We waste too easily our food, our time, our hearts. But the one who met me in the flames is still collecting every shard, every scar, every seed. He's not finished. My name is Anna Carter, and I am proof that nothing is beyond His harvest. Because even the ashes of a wasted life can feed a field when love begins to till again. And that field, it's still growing, still glowing, still waiting for more seeds to fall. Maybe yours is next.